corrections. Appreciate it. We'll call the meeting to order if everybody's ready, and we'll get started. We are being live streamed, correct? Yes. I think we can start off. I think we have a recap or some things that were replied to the local 399 with at this point.
Good morning. We did email at the request of Mr. Morgan over the outstanding articles. I don't think that there are any in disagreement. Right, Mr. Morgan? I think that we all agree that there were no additional ones that needed to be added.
There are no additional ones, and I believe that some of these were agreed upon at the last meeting. But
Yes, sir, I believe so. And we can just kind of go through them and check them off the list together. The union's proposal to add on definitions, to add or change equivalent to his designee was accepted. And I think that under probationary firefighter, they wanted to take out 1 year and add up to 18 months. And we accepted that as well. The only other thing that I guess we needed to, or wanted to discuss is that there's been proposal about a cadet program, so we wanted to add a definition for cadet. And that, didn't know if you wanted us to provide that definition or if you wanted to jointly discuss the definition or if the union had a definition in mind.
Yeah, I think we sort of anticipated the city providing a definition for cadet.
We can do that. The next one was the seniority promotions and demotions and transfers. I think the union wanted to change in the second section, in the first section, wanted to add seniority for cadet firefighters will begin from the date of graduation of the cadet program in situations involving multiple cadets graduating at the same date. Original hire date and order will be used for seniority order. We wanted to go from the date of being sworn in, because that's the current practice, and then we would still use the default for original hire date if there were multiple people sworn in on the same date. In section 2, the union proposed to change employer to fire chief. And I guess we just need to, wanted to have some discussion on that as to why that was a necessary change.
I think that was already done.
It's already done, it's just.
Yeah.
That's not.
It was highlighted just because it was a difference from what it was
Then,
before.
if we'd already agreed on it, we don't need to go back. We're
Okay.
fine. Okay. But then that would be the only changes that in section 1, we wanted to go with that, if that's okay. Or at least just have a discussion on that one. The next one was the health and safety. I think we had originally changed that one to committees, the title of that to committees. We were fine with wanting to keep the standard meeting dates, but we still wanted the union to provide a list of standing committee members, but we were fine with keeping the standing meeting dates. The next one was under the additional pay. The union wanted to add in, I guess that was kind of the language for the paramedic program. Don't really have any problems with that. We would still ask that they still sign the employment agreement. We also wanted to kind of add in some parameters that if they didn't pass the test after maximum attempts, that money would be paid back. And also decide on a specified period of time for when they had to take a test after graduating. I know that sometimes people want to take time off to study.
You said paramedic program. Are you meaning the cadet program?
So this one deals with them in the additional pay. This one specifically deals with them going to paramedic school. The language says any employee who sponsored by the city to attend EMT, paramedic, or EMT fire course will agree to continue employment with the city for a period of 3 years. That language was taken out of essentially the employment agreement that we had submitted as an addendum. And I guess it's just kind of, it's almost verbatim copied into the agreement. So we don't have a problem with the language. We just feel like there may be a necessity for, to add in some parameters for how long it takes an employee to take the test after graduating from the program. And then put in parameters for if they don't pass after maximum attempts, what would be the remedy for that as well?
Is that something that y'all want to add in and propose to us, or are you asking?
So we're asking for discussion on it. Obviously, like I said, the language that was, we don't have a problem with the language, it's almost verbatim from the employment agreement that we submitted. So the language isn't the problem. It's just now, if it's going to be in the contract, it needs to have some, either, like I said, discuss a specified number of times that they can take. I think the maximum attempts, Chief, is, the maximum attempts is 3. And you have, like I said, some people wait up to a year to take the test, right? So obviously, we don't want to be in a situation where someone is 3 or 4 years after taking the paramedic program and still hasn't set for the test and then want to max them out. So just wanted to get feedback on what the union feels like would be a good time, but we wanted to add that in there. So obviously, we have ideas on what that looks like, but open to suggestions and comments. Obviously, I believe that they need to sit for the test, within 3 months of graduating. But, if I've never taken the paramedic exam, I heard it's very strenuous, and some people want to take more time to study. If it's like the bar, we got an extra 4 months post-graduation, so I figured it was about the same. That's why I was kind of using that thing, but obviously, most people, when they take the bar, aren't working a full-time job with families. Some people are, but
I think we need to see a little more detail from the city about how do you want it paid back?
so the question really isn't on the payback. There's already a policy in place for payback, and we can provide, I think in the original employment agreement, it follows along with the same payback schedule for other city employees who are sponsored. We can produce that policy, but it's also in the employment agreement that was submitted with the last contract, so we can provide that. The comments were really, in the discussion was really on how you handle someone who's maxed out the maximum attempts. Like what's the remedy for that? We would obviously think that would be as if they failed the course and need to pay it back. But also, how long do they get to take the exam to max out the attempts? Are we saying they get a year? They can take it once every year, so they get a total of 3 years. Do they get a total of 2 years? Like, what's the time frame? Because that would also, impact when the 3 years of their employment with the city for the certification would occur, right? So, kind of wanted to know that.
Okay.
Just to clarify, this language that we proposed in that article would take the place of that other contract within the contract.
So the only reason for them to need to sign the employment agreement is because we're asking to take money out of their check. So the individual employee would have to sign saying that they agree for that money to be pulled out of their check in the event that they didn't pass or didn't, because that's how the policy goes, is that we basically just deduct a certain amount. They come in and say, hey, you can take.
So it would be a form more similar to what's included in the tuition reimbursement program for the city, under
Yes,
the
sir.
city policy?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Those are the only big changes right now. As for Section 4, the assignment pay, I think the consensus is we kind of want to see what the other dollars look like in the contract before we commit to putting more dollars in. So we could essentially, like, it's not a no, it's just kind of like, can we put that to the back until we decide on wages and some other benefits in the contract? In the articles, overtime and hours and overtime pay, the change in Section 2, I think that was a typo. We're fine with that, so we can close that one out. In the wages, they wanted to remove the Section 2. I believe that's kind of been a long-standing thing. We don't really have a problem with removing it. The wages for the assistant chief are kind of already established, unless y'all wanted to talk about dramatically changing it, but essentially all the wages in the wage table are set. We did want to discuss the addition of a second assistant chief and adding language that it automatically triggers at 30 sworn allotted positions. And I know that there was some discussion about that last time, so we can, 300 allotted positions, sorry. So obviously, I know that there's some discussion on that, so we can finish that language And the temporary promotions, similar to the org chart at the end of the meeting last time, I think that there was some discussion about the union meeting with the chief to determine a policy. I know we worked on some language last time, and the union came back and said that they didn't want a lot of policy language in the contract, which is acceptable. We just wanted to make sure that the policy had, that there was a new, or at least some discussions on a policy in place before we table or close out that item, so that we can make sure that we're not going to have the problems that we're having right now.
I think what we're discussing, trying to discuss with the chief was the organizational structure. And we had a meeting and they were trying to communicate further through emails, but the chief was not agreeable to that and only wanted to meet in person. And so we've not yet had another meeting about that.
And there was no meeting on the, because I think we did also decide that we were going to meet on temporary promotions as well. Was there no meeting on that?
Yeah, it was my understanding that you were okay with the policy change, but that you still wanted some kind of language in the contract.
Yeah, so, yeah, and we talked about that. We said that we wanted to at least have some guiding,
some kind of language in
that we wanted to at least have some guiding language, and that could either, I don't know how you want to do it, heart before the course, but I don't know if y'all wanted to talk about the policy changes that y'all wanted and then what you needed to include in the contract in order to make that viable, or if we wanted to talk about what we wanted to guideline in the contract first and then go back and have the conversation about the policy. I just feel like those are two things that kind of need to be in tangent. I thought I agree that the language we added last time was probably more policy than contractual. And so I'm fine with like starting from scratch on that. I just don't know where we need to start.
We definitely do not want to start from scratch on that. That was a long discussion already. We've already beat that dead horse. We're fine with the language. Our only point was to take the policy language out of the contract and put it in a policy. If the city prefers it to be in the contract and there to be contractual language, then put it back in there. And that's fine. It's unnecessary to have policy language in the contract. If we can agree to take it out and put it in a policy and we agree on that language being placed into the policy, then we don't really have to discuss anything anymore. But if you still, even if it's taken out and put into a policy, if you still want contractual language regarding that same thing, then it's redundant. You might as well just put the language back into the contract.
No, I don't think that. So I didn't know that we were fine with adding the contractual language that we had agreed to into a policy. If that's all that needs to happen, we can work with the chief to get that policy revised and try to get a policy. And if you say, hey, this works, we don't need to have anything, or if we come back and say, hey, we just want to add this one line as it relates to that. I think the biggest thing is that we don't want to take away the ability for the deputy chiefs to make discretionary decisions at the time. And I think adding that hard language in the contract removes that ability. So if that's the only thing that's done, then we can try to work on getting that done, get that over to y'all for a stamp of approval. And if we don't have any feedback, we can close that one out as well.
Right. Whether it's in the contract or the policy,
So
it's not going to take away discretionary. Either way, it doesn't. So, I mean, we've already
in the
agreed
contract
on,
it does, because it's a hard line. It's no movement on that. The contract is a contract. But I think in a policy, sometimes the language is worded where it says at the discretion of the chief, or try to give that, doesn't really open it up as much for problems. Like I said, we can take the language that we already agreed on it, put it in a policy, and if the parties say that's solid, we're fine and happy with that, then we don't have to come back and visit adding additional language to the contract.
Is that something we could get worked on today?
I think today is scheduled for half a day. I don't know.
No, I mean,
No,
for us to work on.
Yeah.
For them to work on.
Yeah, so I think we can try to add that language to the policy and at least try to have it back for tomorrow or emailed so that y'all can review it before tomorrow.
Perfect.
I'm learning, Mr. Morgan. The next one was the entry level hiring procedure. I don't think that there were any like substantive changes in the paragraph, other than the removal of grade 1 firefighters, just because that's the entry level is for grade 1. So we kind of wanted to leave that language in, unless we were removing it because we're starting the addition of the cadet program. So it would be just entry-level hiring. I'm assuming that's the need for removing that because of the cadet program addition.
Correct.
Okay, so that makes sense, in which case that's fine. In section 1 though, and this is just really minor, it's just for consistency in the contract, where it says any candidate that enters the entry-level process without the certifications will be entered into it should say employers, and that's because we just use employers instead of city throughout the contract. Most of the other things were fine. Like I said, the other points where it says city, we would obviously change to employer. That's just a housekeeping matter if the union doesn't have a problem with that. But the overall additions were not a really big thing. The only thing I had is a question on D, where it says EMS employees will be paid their normal wages while attending the fire cadet program. I know in some cases, some of them have like changed their working hours and conditions. So can we just say their normal rate of pay?
So
I don't think the EMS, EMT people fall under our bargaining unit. I'm not sure we need to be talking about that.
Oh, well, this was just language, so that was proposed by the union. So do you want me to just strike that and we just not talk about that at all?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll eliminate D from the union's proposal, and that would be it. And in C, where it says to start year 1 firefighter pay, that would be grade 1, right? Where it says upon completion of the training needed and becoming duly certified, the cadet will graduate from the cadet program and be changed to start to a grade 1 firefighter pay.
So we just worded it start to 1 year firefighter because that's the way the wage table had it listed.
Oh,
Hang
okay, so
on.
what you're saying is that they'll just start at the bottom?
So if you are able to look at the wage table, they would go from the cadet firefighter row into the start to 1 year row. That's what we proposed.
Okay.
I mean, we can discuss that. That's
No,
just
I understand. It's just worded weird, but that's fine. We can just, if that's the change, we can just say as referenced in the wage table, just so it's not like that term of art. That's fine. It's no big deal.
right.
Could you give us a minute when we go to caucus later on, not right now, but to reevaluate that language? Because I think I see where there's some confusion in that.
Yeah, that's
language.
fine.
Not right, but we can see if we can reword that.
Yeah, I'll circle that one. But other than that, there were no major issues. Like I said, the section 1 was almost aligned with what the city had proposed. So there's some places in there where it says city. Obviously, we want to change that to employer, just because that's how it's termed in the contract. But other than that, there are no.
Yeah, I was just talking about on the wage table, looking at that
Yeah.
language on there.
So,
There was one additional item that we brought up in the last meeting. I think it's under additional pay, the special teams.
yeah, we already added that back in.
What's that?
The dive team.
No, the fire chief's ability to eliminate teams in between agreements.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we kind of lightly discussed that, and if I remember right, I think y'all were going to discuss that amongst yourselves. And
I'm sorry, that one's not in my, I'm sorry, that one's not in my notes. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if we discussed it or not. I apologize. I'll make a note of it. And that was under special teams. What article is that?
let me bring it up to make sure.
While he's looking for that, we had also proposed a flat rate assignment fee, and you were going to study the financial impact. I believe y'all have done that. So what's your position now on that?
I'm sorry, you might have missed it. I said that when I addressed it earlier, I said that the city wanted to wait to see what the entire package looked like before we committed to that assignment pay. So it wasn't necessarily a no, but we did want to see like what the wages or increases were going to be before we committed to do an additional pay, assignment pay.
I didn't think we were discussing wages.
No, we're not.
Then why don't we have that information available?
So
now?
like I said, we did provide the impact. I just don't know that, and I can let the manager speak for himself on that, why he's not prepared to do that.
Real quick, it's additional pay. That's what it's under.
After we caucus, we'll come back and talk about it.
So I think sounds like everybody's here trying to get as close to a deal as we can. I think that's the city's position. I'm sure that's the position of the union at this point. So maybe to help speed it along, we can kind of go over what the tasks are for each side if we're going to break for caucus, and maybe have some of the dialogue that Sheree was had brought up now, so that we don't, we can be more efficient with our time. On the definitions, that first section, we will propose something today for the cadet definition. On the committees, as Sheree said, the city was still interested in having that list prepared or provided to the city in advance. Do you guys have a position on that? Do you need to talk about it, or can we talk about it here?
You just want a list of members that are eligible for those committees, right?
Sorry, or just assign, like who are you assigning to the committee, so that obviously when we're making the schedule, we know that there's a committee, because we did say that they can attend on shift. I know the union has struck that language, but if
Right, but did you also want a list of members that can step in as an alternate?
yeah.
Okay.
Do you think we're good with that, or we want to talk about it, or? Okay, great. So essentially E, we would just unstrike it. Is that acceptable? That was the change that y'all had proposed.
I believe so. We can discuss it just to make sure.
Okay. And then on the additional pays, do you have any comments or feedback now, or do you need to talk separately about timing of taking the test and how, in terms of that part of the process, not necessarily the mechanics of the payback, but just y'all, of course, know better than we do what seems like an appropriate amount of time to give somebody to take the test and
get you an answer.
okay. Good there. So I think we would also like to know before we caucus where y'all are at on the assistant chief.
We haven't changed our position on that. We're not willing to engage in those conversations. We don't think the law allows us to have one now, and we're not willing to project into the future when we might want one without negotiating at that time.
Well, the law allows us to negotiate about any term.
Allows you to negotiate, but it
Yeah.
takes two people to do that, and we're not willing to do that right now. And we'll do it at the time when when the law allows you to have that person after negotiations. We'll talk to you at that time, but that's our position. What's next on your list?
So the city, just to be clear, the union is refusing to agree to a second assistant chief right now.
The law doesn't allow, we're willing.
The
to
law
go
allows us to
by the law.
negotiate. No,
We're not willing to negotiate that issue right now.
Glenn, the law allows the parties to negotiate. There's a lot of things in the contract that are not specified in 143. So we're here trying to have that's part of the bargaining process. The city makes concessions, the union makes concessions. This is one of the points that the city has emphasized as being important to the operations of the department. The law does not forbid us from discussing this or including in the contract. If the union is refusing to have that discussion, then that's your position, that's fine. But it's not because the law doesn't allow for it.
What's your next point?
So is that
I've already answered that question. What's your next point?
the union's position? Is
My deposition is not being taken. I've already told you what our position is. What's next on your list?
okay. And we're entitled to have an answer.
I gave you an answer. She can read it back to you if you forgot it.
I didn't forget it. You did. You.
Then if you remember it, then you know I gave
Okay,
you
I'm
an
going to
answer.
finish my sentence before you interrupt me. Your response was that the law doesn't allow it, and I'm telling you that is wrong. The law allows us to negotiate. That's what the bargaining is. It's give and take on both sides. If the union's position is you're not going to give and you're refusing to discuss that as part of bargaining, then that's your position, and that's what I'm trying to confirm.
We discussed it last time, and so we don't need to revisit it again today.
We discussed it, and there was no resolution. There was no outcome.
That's
So
what happens when you can't agree on something. There is no outcome. If you need to arbitrate it, go ahead. It's okay.
I know it's okay.
we've
I got
already
no problem with
discussed it.
arbitration.
I've given you my position on the union standpoint, and we need to move on. We don't have much time again today, and we'd like to move on if we could.
Okay, so the union's position is you're not going to negotiate on the topic of assistant chief. Understood.
I can't agree on the record with your recitation of my comments. I've said my comments, they're there, somebody can read them later. So what's next? Nothing? Okay, we're going to caucus now?
Okay, about how much time, what do we think? 30 minutes, hour? Okay, we'll reconvene it at about 10:10. and reconvene. We'll get started, so it's about 10:18, so Ms. Albin, if you'll.
Sure. Sherry will be down in just a second. We've got a definition for cadet that's being printed so we can circulate and see if we can finish out the definition section. We also revised the seniority language to reflect that an employee in the cadet program's seniority date would run from the date they're sworn in rather than the graduation date, to be consistent with the current practice. So,
Which is date of hire,
I'm sorry?
which is date of hire. Everybody's sworn in when they get hired.
So that's what I was going to say, is to make it easier, because I feel like I kind of complicated that by adding that language.
Okay.
There was an attempt to make it less complicated, and I think I complicated it more. But we talked about it back there, and I actually did it on that flash drive, but just striking that language, period, and just doing it the way that we've always done it would be fine. I don't want to overcomplicate it. So just as they're hired in, you know, their seniority is calculated in the same way that they always do. So if the city decides to give preference to a dual certified candidate, then they would be hired ahead. Or if they just hire everybody down the list like normal, then 1 through 10, that's your seniority list.
Right, okay. Well,
And we made that change.
are you drafting that?
It's already drafted. We already gave it we put over there for Sheree to
Okay,
put up if you need to look at it.
It's just that language stricken from the proposal is all.
okay. We'll take a look at that then. And we won't send ours over. We are going to draft and submit to y'all an article on the assistant chief, since the indication is Mr. Morgan said the union's not going to discuss it. We're still going to submit it for consideration. We'll have that tomorrow.
I do want to say that apparently on the second meeting, Ms. Reed said that the assistant chief issue was non-negotiable. And there's been about 12 meetings where the union has offered language for certifications and testing, et cetera, that has been rejected. So again, my comment earlier about our position has been well stated over the meetings, but we'll be happy to take a look at your language.
Are you done? The other, let's see. Did you have a response on the timing of the payback, or the testing rather?
6 months from graduation.
Okay. Do you have anything drafted for us to look at? It's on there too, okay. All right, we'll look at that. The city is not in agreement on the additional pay that was added for, under Article, let's see,
The assignment pay?
the assignment pay. So it was Section 4, I can't remember which article.
Do you have a counter for that?
No, we do not. And we talked about the request that the chief not be permitted to change the special teams in between. We are not in agreement with that. We think that falls within management rights for those teams to be able to be changed, eliminated based on the needs of the department.
Just to clarify, we're not going to agree with a contract that has that language in it. Just wanted to make sure that that was stated clearly.
Okay. Well, and
I can offer a little bit of explanation on that, just so we have it on the record, is that you're asking us to give permission to the chief to take away benefits anytime he wants to from our members, and we believe that would be something that we would have to discuss with the chief and get approval of our membership. That's a negotiable item anyway. And for us to agree in here today that we would just give the chief unilateral authority to be able to change and take away benefits of our members.
So the management of the department is not a benefit of the members. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you about that. That's falls squarely within the management rights that the chief already has under the contract. So we're not asking for anything different than a right that the chief is already entitled to exercise. It's not a benefit that is unique to the individual members. That is squarely a management right for the department.
If it's already there, why are you putting something else in? If he already has those rights, why are you adding
I didn't say
something?
we're putting something else in. The request was, I understood from the union to add language that would not allow him to change the special teams. And I'm saying we're maintaining the management rights that are already in the contract, which would include the right to have special teams, change special teams as the department requires through the life of the contract.
Ma'am, the point that he's making is that wasn't language that was in there before. Eliminate teams was never in there before. So if that was a management rights, right, sorry, that's not well worded, but if that was always covered under management rights, then there would be no reason that the city would have added that particular language. So that's his point. So if you're saying that it was always covered under management rights and he was always able to take away special teams that do represent a benefit because each person that's on a special team is paid a certain incentive pay under our contract, then there would have never been any reason to add his ability to eliminate those teams in between agreements.
And the employees will retain the ability to be paid the benefit if they're on a special team. But
They're on a special team that's not eliminated.
It's not a benefit to the employees to have a particular special team. Again, I disagree. I think that's a right that the chief has and has always had, and it's part of having oversight and management of the department.
Okay, and if he always had that right, then you wouldn't be adding that language. That's the point. Thank you.
On the entry-level hiring, we do want to add, and we'll have this for tomorrow, just a clause that makes clear nothing in that section with the addition of the cadet program diminishes or alters the right of the chief to establish the entry-level selection procedures. We just want to make sure that's clear. I think that's all okay. One more thing on the wages. Last time you had added the page that had the EMS staff on here, and we've kind of touched on it, but I just want to be clear, the local is not bargaining for the EMS staff.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up again. So what we attempted to do in the last meeting was try to move forward with what we thought was already being moved forward through the settlement of the lawsuit. It is correct that we can't bargain for members that aren't bargaining unit members, and all EMS personnel right now are not bargaining unit members. We would love for them to be, and we look forward to them being bargaining unit members once that day comes. But we can't bargain for people that aren't in our bargaining unit. Again, we tried to take a step forward and ease our way into it, but I think that in hindsight, probably the better way to do it is to wait. And once they become part of our bargaining unit, then we can certainly negotiate all of those contractual benefits and wages at that point in time. I was surprised, but pleased to see that there was a little bit of surprise on the city side whenever we put the blank wage table in there. And I'll say to that I'm glad to see that because that obviously means that the city, in my mind, believes that they should be paid more and potentially means that they should be paid equal to us, which we would be perfectly happy with that happening. The city is in control of their wages right now. So if the city wanted to do that right now, we would be very happy to know that and see that. Because we don't want them to lose rights and benefits. We don't want them to lose wages. And I just want to make sure that we go on record saying that, because there was a big misconception made after that last meeting that we want to take things away from them or we want to take wages away from them. And that's not at all what we want to do. We are just attempting to try to land this plane. That's been a very long, drawn out process of trying to truly merge EMS and fire. I believe that with a settlement to the lawsuit, we could probably do that with a few bumps left in the road. But again, we can't bargain for people that are not in our bargaining unit. So right now, we're going to take a step back and we're going to remove the EMS personnel related language that we originally put in the last proposal for the last meeting. And we will reapproach that at a later date whenever they become part of our bargaining unit. And I would add too, then we've talked about this, that we would be happy to put contractual language for both of us that says that if, when, however y'all want to word it, they become part of our bargaining unit, that both parties will come back together and open the contract for the sake of negotiating those benefits and wages for all those new bargaining unit members. But I just wanted to take a few minutes and make sure that that was all clear. And to answer your question directly, yes, the wage table that was added at the bottom would be removed for right now. So for the sake of trying to get this contract ratified, and we can address that at a later date.
Okay, and just since this is being live streamed and you know, as it should be, the confusion or the surprise, as you described it, on the city's part was twofold. One, as y'all know, the union strenuously argued in the litigation that the EMS personnel are part of the bargaining unit, which is what gave the union the right to intervene in the lawsuit that Caleb Finter had filed. So yes, it was definitely a surprise to see a complete turn on that position, and to, as you've stated, concede that they are not part of the bargaining unit. The second part was simply if, in fact, the union was coming and saying that they were part of the bargaining unit, to appear to have not proposed wage increases similar to those that the union had asked for the sworn firefighters was a bit surprising. So that's all. That was the source of that reaction. And, you know, I'm not going to get into all the details of the settlement discussions and too much into the lawsuit, but that's where we were coming from. It was just a surprise to see the union change its position so quickly from what it had taken before. But that's fine. We will remove that since the union's conceding that the EMS staff are not part of the bargaining unit. We'll eliminate that from the contract at this time.
And the union hasn't changed its legal position at all. Do you have anything else?
I'm sorry, so they are part of the bargaining unit. You can't have it both ways. Either they're part of the bargaining unit. Let me finish. Either they're part of the bargaining unit and then the bargaining unit has a duty to bargain on their behalf, or they're not part of the bargaining unit and they shouldn't be included in the discussion.
Yeah, it's the union's position that the EMS, when they moved into the fire department, became civil service employees, and as such would fall under our bargaining unit definition. However, the city continues to pay them civilian wages and treat them as civilian employees as opposed to civil service. So while we think they're there's actually a lawsuit pending right now where you contend that they're not civil service employees and they would not fall under our bargaining unit. So it's on appeal right now, so we can decide. Some judge can tell us, Are they or are they not? So
Actually,
our
the lawsuit
position
isn't
in the
about whether or
lawsuit-
not they're in
excuse
the
me,
bargaining
I'm
unit.
talking, and your
The-
conduct is not helpful for this process.
And you've been completely inappropriate this morning, cutting me off and trying to move on when it's a discussion you don't want to have, sir. We're
Our
trying
health
to
and- our health- yes,
facilitate
ma'am.
this.
Thank you for that.
You're
Our
very
Health
welcome.
and Safety Committee members are Casey Sanders, Kevin Cowan, and Josh Davis. And our policy members are Brian Hebert, Jeff Neeson, and Cody Hendon. And as far as alternates, because of the scheduling of meetings and work schedules, et cetera, our alternates would be anyone in our membership that would be available that day should we need one. So
We'll
get
need
you the
a list
of those
of,
people.
and we'll need
Yes.
a list of the alternates.
We will.
please.
We'll get you that. But I'm telling you who they are. We need to do that. And the alternates will be, of course, our membership. So we'll get that to you this afternoon as well.
Well, but the city's not going to agree that the alternates can be anybody in the membership.
I can't help with what you agree to. I can just tell you who they are because.
And I'm just trying to have a discussion.
Excuse me.
You're
You want to, you
excused.
see, you want to get on me about interrupting you, but you don't mind interrupting me.
Are
Our
you done?
membership is such that sometimes things happen, and rather than not have a meeting about safety, which is important to us, we need to get someone to be there. And if they can't have the meeting just simply because we didn't tell you this person's name, well, then let me just give you all of my members' names because they're all qualified to be an alternate on these committees. So you may not like it, I'm sorry, but I don't know any other way to do it. So we're going to do it that way, and then y'all can decide what you want to do from there.
We certainly will. Thank you for that.
Okay. Just to follow back up to some things about you representing the EMS. You said you don't represent the EMS? Because we've been approached by members of EMS that says they're dues paying members and are part of your union. So how does that work?
They're not part of the bargaining unit,
They're saying they're members of the union.
right?
They're dues paying members of the union.
Right.
So they're not represented as who's. I'm just asking for clarity because it comes to me and they've written letters to me that they are part of the union.
We've had dues paying members of EMS even when they were under the health department for over 20 years, probably closer to 30. What that means, they can still become union members, but throughout this entire process or throughout their career, they have not been considered eligible for civil service or under our contract because they were in a different department. Now that they're in the fire department, that's where we believe that things changed.
So you submit grievances for them, right?
Not prior to them being in the fire department.
But you do now. I get grievances
The only
that
grievance that you
relate to
would get,
people in EMS. So, I mean, you said you don't represent them, but you do. And I just want clarification because they're coming to us and me and saying, hey, we're part of this local 399 and we're not being represented. And so it's a mixed message. And maybe this is an opportunity where we can get clarity.
It's really not. That really is not a negotiating item, and we shouldn't be wasting time on that. We can talk about it later if you'd like, because it wouldn't violate anything if it's just a discussion about how the unions work. So I would ask that we move on to more productive issues.
Well, I think some of the other things you were
Contract.
talking about were not negotiating items, but we talked about them. So I think this is also an opportunity to work together and get to a place to where we can get something resolved.
I'd like to go off the record and we go out in the hall, go to your office,
And
go to
that's-
your
and that's the
conference room, we
point.
can discuss
Well,
that.
no, I think it needs to be on the record.
Well, then,
I mean, that's
then we
part
don't
of the
need to talk
discussion.
about anything.
Okay, I got my answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
just to clarify, grievances for EMS employees go through the civilian grievance process. We've never sent civilian EMS personnel through our contractual grievance process.
Yeah, it's just not grievances, you know, they're just saying they're a part of the union, but they're not evidently.
They are union members, they're just not part of the bargaining unit based on the recognition article.
They pay dues, but they don't get the benefits of
That's not-
all of the rest of them.
That's not appropriate.
Okay, we're good. We're good. Thank you.
And again, we're here to try to have discussions. That's what bargaining is. And it's not, when you're trying to control or dictate what we actually get to talk about, that's really inappropriate, sir.
It's not negotiable. You're kind of doing the same thing. Do you
No,
want to see
we've
the
been
language?
happy to negotiate everything. Standing up isn't going to
No,
change.
I'm asking, can we adjourn and come back tomorrow? Because this is not helpful to the process. We've given you language to look at. Would you like to look at the language?
We are going to look at the language.
We're going to do it now while we're here?
You're welcome to take a seat. You don't need to stand.
Thank you very much.
And get-
Or you want to look at the language now?
We are going to look at the language now. What we're not going to
session?
do is have you continue to say, we want to discuss these, but no, city, we're not going to talk about the points that you're trying to raise.
Just like
That's
you
not
say the same
appropriate.
thing to us.
No, I have not. We're happy to discuss any points that you want to discuss. That's what we're here to
But they're
do.
not negotiable. The second
they're-
assistant chief is not negotiable. Y'all said that. So what good does it do to discuss it? You're willing to
because
discuss it, but we're not going to change anything.
Because in the last meeting, the union had indicated there might be some room to come to an agreement on that. We were trying to advance that conversation today. You said that the union's not going to bargain and not going to discuss that. I think that's
See, again, that's not what I said. I said we've had 12
the way that bargaining
meetings.
works. So
Yeah,
why don't we go ahead and
let
look at
me-
the language
Let me
and
make a recommendation. Can we break for 10 minutes, and just 10 minutes, and come back at, what's this, 10:40, about 10:50? Is that okay?
Sure, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, if it pleases everyone, we'll reconvene. Welcome back. Ms. Reed, as we all know in this room, we're pulling double duty today, as I can hear the pension meeting being listened to in the room too. So the city's addressing both issues as we speak. We'll reconvene. Do we want to say something first, or?
Yeah, I think we're
Okay.
looking at the language that was proposed. So we can start with this one. This is the strikeout that y'all mentioned a minute ago with the seniority. Can you go up? There we go. So we're just going to strike that addition.
No, we just, that's original language. Everything else is original language in that section. That the blue was additional language, and, after we discussed it in here and in caucus, it's not really necessary. We can just, the seniority can go based on the order of hire, just like it always has.
Mark that one off the list.
Yes.
Okay.
I think the committees was the other one they had. Okay, so I must have misunderstood. I thought, I thought you guys had added the identifying who the,
Yeah, sorry. Scroll down a little bit. Yeah, I thought that I had taken the strikeout away from that first sentence. Because we're fine with providing the committee, the permanent committee members along with any potential alternates.
Then I'll just mark it as done, and when we get I'll send over either the documents, either via email for TA in the morning or for just review. So.
well, I think you missed part of the conversation though,
Okay,
that
sorry.
the union had wanted the alternates to be anybody in the membership. So I think that's the only potential snag, but I did want to look at whatever the language you were proposing, even if it included that. And this doesn't look like it changed, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Right, it's because for whatever reason, maybe I didn't save it like I thought I did, but that first, if you scroll up that first sentence, the strikeout shouldn't be there. I was going to leave that, we were going to leave that language. The union shall provide a list of members appointed to each committee, including any alternates. We're fine with that.
Okay.
Were there any other things in the committee ones that we needed to discuss? No? Sorry, I missed the excitement.
We did 6 months to take the test.
Oh, okay. That's in the next one.
Different, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing else in this article.
Oh, I'm
though.
sorry, no.
Right.
Okay. Let me go to the next one. And so that would be the addition of C. The employee will be allotted 6 months to successfully complete the necessary testing for certification.
Yes.
Okay. Did we discuss maximum attempts? Like what happens after, like if they don't pass on the first one? So are they required to take it every 6 months until they pass?
No, they would just have 6 months, is what we talked about. Now, if you guys want to also add a max number of attempts, the reason we put it at 6 months is because I believe, based on the process of signing up for the tests, that 6 months should give them enough time to complete all of their attempts. But if there's a desire there to max out the number of attempts, then we're fine with hearing what you want to.
So the state agency gives you 3 attempts before you have to like go back.
refresher.
So the city doesn't want to have to pay for like the refresher. That's what I'm saying. So like after you max out your attempts, either you,
Right, yeah, do you want to offer some language for that?
Well, I guess, do y'all think that the 6 months is sufficient to take all three if necessary? Yes.
I would believe that it would be enough time for all three initial attempts.
well, what's the sign up period? Because I think you said that the sign up period allowed, because my thing is like, what if you graduate, right? And then you have to sign up to take it. Is it like a long period? Is a test offered regularly or is it only offered at certain periods of time?
I believe because of the number of testing centers that are available now, that the turnaround time of being able to sign up for another test wouldn't necessarily be the issue. It would be the members' ability to study for that retesting. So if they fail it once, they should be signed up very soon after they finish their training program, because that's the best time to take that sort of a test is when it's fresh on your mind. So if they fail it the first time, they should have plenty of time to be able to refresh themselves on the information and sign up and take another test and do it a third time if they need to. If they need more after that, again, we're okay with, if the city wants to add in that they're also allotted the full 6 attempts, but it would be at their expense. We're okay with that too. Give them every opportunity they can to pass and to not have gone through the training for no reason. So we're open to suggestions from y'all on that, because that would be an expense either for y'all or for the member. And if you don't pass it after the third time, then
I think we'll like want to, if that's what I'm hearing you say, I think we'll probably just add in some language that the max attempts are 3, and maybe it comes back that needs to be in a policy or just in the agreement that they signed and not necessarily in the contract. I'll let you look at it and y'all can make a decision on that. Okay. I think the other one on this one was whether or not the chief had the ability to remove teams. Is that the other outstanding issue?
yeah, we discussed it when you were out.
Okay.
Y'all's position is that he has the
Revisit.
ability to eliminate it, and our position is that we're not in agreement with that.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
Can we be clear coded? The position was they will not approve a contract that this language is not agreed to by them.
Oh, she was talking about something different.
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking about the
Just want to keep it calm.
teams.
Let's keep it moving. Everybody's smiling and we're just moving right along. Okay, hours and overtime pay.
I
That
think
one was one that we already like agreed to, so I'm gonna mark that one as done as well.
those were the only ones that there was new language since this morning on.
Right?
And then we have one on the other thumb drive for the definitions with the cadet in it.
Okay.
You want to just put that one up?
All right, which one is it, Kel?
It's the definitions revised. See it?
This is
The 7:10
okay.
meeting.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Sorry. Okay. There it is.
We kind of just borrowed from the language that y'all had proposed on the cadet program in terms of how to define it. And that was our only modification to the definitions. Yes, no, jump in the lake, what do y'all
I
think?
think that language looks fine. It would be good for us to make sure that we're on the same page and that we understand each other, that anybody hired from the civil service list, whether it be cadet or dual certified, is a full-time firefighter, or full-time 40-hour versus 48-hour, but they would be sworn in as a civil service firefighter upon hire. So the date of hire, starting the seniority, the whole nine, like cadet versus dual certified.
The chief is shaking his head no. I think if they come in and they already have their TFPC, the
TCFP.
yeah, that stuff, they get sworn in. If they only have the dish and they need to go to the academy, they get sworn in after they complete the academy.
Anybody hired off a civil service list to be a firefighter for the fire department is a civil service employee. That's exactly how the fire chief got hired in. I don't know why he's shaking his head, but.
Well, you just asked what the policy
Yeah,
is.
I know.
So,
I wanted to make sure that we were
and
clear
then-
on that.
Yeah, and so technically in the police academy, like they wait till their cadets come out and they swear them in after they complete the police academy. And I believe that that's kind of what this is modeled after. I guess we kind of have to have some more discussion on the entry level process.
I think that may have been something at one point in the past that they agreed to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what civil service says. Civil service says that an applicant may not be certified as eligible for the beginning position with the fire department unless the application meets all legal requirements necessary to become eligible for future certification of the Commission of Fire Protection Standards and Education. And, simply as Cody put it, upon hiring, after being hired in accordance with civil service, which would be taking the civil service exam, you are hiring a civil service employee who from that date of hire is covered by the benefits under civil service, with the exception of they are an at-will employee. However, they still accrue vacation per civil service. They still accrue sick leave per civil service. They're still provided protections under there. Their probationary period begins at the date of hire, not after they get certified. Their probationary period starts after their date of hire. So,
Right, and that was the purpose of adding in the extra 6 months for anybody that has to go to the training, so that they can have that, so that you're not taking away that extra 6 months of evaluation. So they would be going through a fire academy, which would take them out of the evaluation period for probably only 4 to 5 months, but it would still extend that probationary period for anybody that's a cadet that has to go through that training, so that they still do have a full year once they officially start the job on shift to be evaluated. So, and that was something that we talked about outside of this meeting, just to clarify that the 18-month period, the reason that we worded it as up to 18 months is because the 18-month period applies to cadets, whereas a person that is hired dual certified already would just be subject to the typical one year probationary period. So there's kind of two things working there. It's just an added allowance so that we don't have to, talk to the commission about extending each one of their probationary years by 6 months every single time we need to do that for a cadet that has to go through the training process.
Okay, I think we'll have to probably talk, as far as the cadet, I think in theory, everything makes sense, and I think we all agree. Where we might need more discussion is at what point their seniority runs, and they're sworn in. So we'll have to, I think we need to talk with the chief and kind of circle back on that tomorrow. That was the only other language that we had. So I think we've covered all of the articles that we said we were going to circulate language on today.
I guess I have a question. So if you had an individual who was hired with no certifications and they went through the fire academy and they went through the paramedic school, can you tell me like just a time frame for both of those? Like, is it feasible for somebody to do that in 18 months?
Not paramedic school.
So if so in that probationary period, someone would essentially not be able to complete the certifications, like what would be the remedy for that?
They would be able to complete the minimum requirement, which is EMT and firefighter certifications.
So you can get through, you just can't go through paramedic.
Yeah, just not
school.
paramedic. Yeah,
Okay.
paramedic's like a year and a half. Correct me if I'm wrong. Year and a half.
So what's the time frame to do the fire academy and the ENT? Are those combined?
Two semesters, unless you do a summer class. Then it would be spring semester, summer semester.
Okay.
That's what it's called.
So doable within the 18 months?
I guess the thing that I had, I wanted to follow back with you about the dispatch situation with the certified firefighters and dispatch, and see if there's something that the union would be willing to talk about, negotiate, and getting some people out there. Because they would put, we have a report that recommended that those people be put back on the street and get those certified firefighters back out on the fire line rather than be in a dispatch. And I guess that recommendation was never followed by the city, or either some litigation came up, arbitration came up. But it would give us additional people on the street, as you say, it might be needed, but also we can get people into dispatch. Because the way I understand it, the certified firefighters are not, they're firefighters, but they're not trained in telecommunications before they go into the dispatch service. So they're not trained dispatchers beforehand. They're firefighters who are trained. So that thing's still out there. If there's something that we can do to enhance our fire service and get more people on the street and help resolve that situation.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the last meeting, and as for right now, we're not prepared to do away with those positions in the dispatch office.
We're not asking to do away with them, to put them where they need to be, fighting firefighters rather than dispatchers.
Yeah, those positions have been in our department for a very, very long time, and we believe that they belong there and there's value for them to be there. We do need more people working on shift, and that's why we've discussed so much the entry-level hiring, so that we can get more people hired, so we have more people working here.
Yeah.
I would also add that under Chapter 143, it is clearly defined that fire communications is a civil service position. So in a sense, you would be asking us to do away with a civil service right. And that's one of the reasons, not only that we won the last two arbitrations when the city tried to implement that, but also a reason why we wouldn't want to give that up.
Well, it's one of those things that, it's to be addressed in the contract. So that's why I'm bringing it up during the contract negotiations. So
Yes, sir, I understand.
we can all have that discussion here. But basically the goal is to improve the fire department. If the thought is we need more people, and this is a way to get more people out there that we're already paying to be firefighters and help resolve that situation. And also, the city could look at a true consolidated dispatch service that's much more effective, much more productive than two separate dispatch services where we're paying for resources for separate space, separate places, when the city paid two plus $1 million a few years ago to build a dispatch center that was to be consolidated and provide efficiencies for not only the city of Beaumont, but for Jefferson County. Thank you.
As citizens, Mr. Williams, you and I'm thankful that we have people at the dispatch office that are firefighters that can render assistance before the emergency people arrive. They know what they're talking about, they're experienced, and get them on before they're there. They know what they're going to be addressing. They know what to look for, and I think it's helpful for the citizens to have that ability. And I appreciate the guys that are in that dispatch. And while they may want to go and do something else on the streets, it's a very valuable service they provide, and I'm sure everyone is thankful for that.
Yeah, and it's something that most cities have civilian dispatching, and not so much sworn firefighters and dispatching. Dispatchers are very well-trained people. They're very dedicated people, the civilian staff is, and they offer excellent service in many departments here. So we're just looking for efficiencies if we can find them.
On behalf of me and my family and my friends, I'm thankful that the city of Beaumont does it the way they do it.
I just wanted to ask if you, kind of quickly going back on the entry level and at what point they're, in the probationary and what that means. Have y'all looked at any other departments where they treat the employees as civil service on hiring when they come in with no certifications at all?
Yes, ma'am. I can't remember a department off the top of the list, but any department who hires in accordance with civil service, that's the way their probationary period begins. I mean, there's language in here that goes back and, that attaches to that, just like the probationary period extension. It talks about that if a member is hired, this is a civil service statute, that if a member is hired with no certification, then with mutual agreement between the city and the bargaining unit, we can extend the probationary period. That wouldn't be in there if those members were not considered civil service.
Well, I disagree with your reading of it, and I know for certain that there are cities that don't treat the employees who come in with no certifications as full-fledged civil service, because actually the statute says they're not until they've completed the probationary period. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just wondering if there's another city that you've looked at that actually follows the model that you're describing that we could maybe reach out to and see how they're handling it.
The same way this department handled it 20 years ago, we handled it the exact same way that we're suggesting right now. I can't, like I said before, I can't think of a specific name of a department right now. I could go back and look through my notes, and I'm sure I could probably find you an entire list of that, of different departments that do it. I'm fairly certain that San Antonio does that, which seems to be a department that the city of Beaumont has been trying to compare us to for quite some time now. But I can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else? Is there a need for us to be tomorrow?
To complete the contract, I think we probably need to, right? Because y'all have some things y'all are bringing.
Well, there were some things said earlier that were pretty definitive, and it was drawing lines in the sand. Excuse me. So, are we ready to meet tomorrow? Seem to be some pretty big issues hanging out there.
I think if you're ready to present a contract to us to vote on, we don't need to meet tomorrow, but until that time, I think we should continue to meet as regularly as possible. That's the reason we scheduled 2 days back to back as opposed to waiting another month for the next meeting.
Okay, well, I'm all for that. Just want to make sure we have mutual consent that we're at a point that we want to continue tomorrow and have a meeting. So we're scheduled for 1:30, I believe it is, tomorrow. So unless there's something else, you got something.
Well, just so if we're going to come back tomorrow, what are the, I guess, what is it that we're trying to cover so we can all come in prepared and not?
I'll jump in. I'll tell you what we're going to do. At the conclusion, before the end of the day, we're going to send the seniority promotions and transfers, the committees, and the hours and overtime back for them to review in final language form. If there's another one that I missed, let me know. And then we'll also be working on a draft policy for the temporary promotions for review and discussion for tomorrow.
If you get those done today, could you,
That's the plan.
okay?
Sorry,
we'll
could you
get you
say
the
those one
list.
more time? The senior,
I have seniority promotions and transfers, committees, and hours and overtime.
Anything else we should be prepared to talk about tomorrow or that's left over that we haven't talked about today? Nope.
I think we've established where we are on the other.
Are we okay with the 6 months? Just so we can put that to bed?
I think we wanted to include like some additional like language to make sure that like the maximum temp language is included in there. So I'll just be providing very minor changes that, they have to take in, successfully pass within 6 months. And then obviously, like we said, we want the employee at least to have that language that the employee has to sign the separate agreement in accordance with the city policy to pay back if they fail.
And y'all are bringing something back on the entry-level hiring?
We need to visit with the chief just about the timing of the,
Sure, I mean tomorrow, though.
Yes, I have
And that we're going to
I
discuss
have
tomorrow.
definitions and the wages article, and then the temporary promotions and entry-level hiring procedures as the ones that are still outstanding that we need to come back and discuss on. The cadet obviously matches with the hiring, the definition matches with the hiring level, so that's the only reason why that one's not done, just because I don't want to agree on a definition until we agree on how's, yes, sir. So those are the only things.
I think that's all we have.
okay?
See you tomorrow.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.